Now let's get on to our speeches. Our next speaker has been a Toastmaster for 10 years and a member of Peninsula Pros for the past 2. Despite Toastmasters International's best efforts, he managed to achieve distinguished Toastmaster status recently. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Congratulations. Currently a member of 4 clubs, he is Vice President of Education for Bayview and Club President of Peninsula Pros. This speech is part of his 3rd time through the Competent Communication Manual. And this time, all the speeches are on the topic of interpersonal communication skills. The material for the speeches comes from what he has been learning from a local teacher, Selwa Saeed, and she's amazing, with whom he has been studying for 5 years. Tonight's speech is the number 4 speech in the manual, How to Say It, entitled Where Words Can Lead You. The goals of the speech are to 1, select the right words and sentence structures to communicate your ideas clearly, accurately, and vividly. 2, use rhetorical devices to enhance and emphasize ideas. 3, eliminate jargon and unreasonable words, unnecessary words. Use correct grammar. Please help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster Artie Buss.
That's easy for you to say. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Words can take you all kinds of places. The kinds of places that I'm thinking of and the kinds of places I'm going to be talking about are places inside of us and places inside of other people. Now, what I've passed out is based upon a model of various ego selves from what's called transactional analysis. And the idea is that when we use words, they can take us to one of these 3 places inside of us. And these places are sometimes known as ego states. One is the place of thinking. That's the place of the head, the parent, ego. That's also a place of judgment. And it's actually in a problem area, in an interpersonal relationship, it's a place of unconsciousness. Because if we're being judgmental with another person in the problem area, then we're not really being present to that other person. A second part is the gut, our child self. This is the place where of victimization. It's a place of emotions. And when we're there, we're also unconscious because we're not being mindfully present with the other person. And the third place is the place of heart-centered, aware self. It's a place of consciousness in which we are being mindful of both our own goodness and also the goodness of the other person. The words that we use can help move another person into one of these places. And the way in which we speak can also do the same. If you ask a question of someone, then that tends to take them into their head. If you're asking a question for information, where do you go for that information? You go to your head to think of the answer. If it's not a problem area and somebody's simply asking for information, then it's no big deal. But in a problem area, a question is almost always entrapping. And when we ask a question, it will either drive the other person to their child self of unconsciousness or to their head self of unconsciousness. And so when there's a problem between you and another person, a problem area, one of these landmine-like places, whenever a question is asked of you, you should never answer it. Isn't that interesting? Never answer a question until you understand the intent of that question. And the reason for that is because if you try to answer a question from a place of unconsciousness, such as your head or your gut, then it will simply lead to more problems. But if you understand the intent of what the question is and can answer it from your aware self, then you can establish what the connection is. and find out what it's really about. So, for example, here's an example of a question in a problem area. Are you really going to wear that? Now, what's really being asked here? What's going on? Is the person asking just for information? Well, if you're, let's say you're a couple and you're preparing to go out, are they simply saying, well, is that really what you're going to wear? Obviously that's what you're going to wear. They're saying something else. They're really saying, I have a problem with what you're wearing. And so that's what's really going on. Now, if you respond from your head place, then you might say something like, well, what's the matter with it? That's being judgmental of them, and will tend to move them into their child self. So the words that we use in that response, if you respond from your parent, then the other person tries to move the other person into their child self. So again, you become unconscious. If you respond from your child self, you might say, well, I don't know, I thought it looked okay, I guess it's not very good. Well, what you've done is, by becoming your child, you move them into their parent. And so once again, the words that we use can take us to these different places. So what would another response be? Well, you can validate what's really being said, what's really being communicated is not, is that what you're going to wear, but is, I have a problem with what you're going to wear, maybe. And so you could respond, so it's not okay for you, what you're saying. Or there's some issue with, with what's happening. And so that can help move them not into their head or to their child, but more into their aware self. They need to then get in touch with the fact that they're doing that. And so by moving in there, they get into the intent of it. So words can move us into one of these three places. And by responding always from our place of heart-centered awareness, we can always help move the other person into their place of heart-centered awareness. And in a problem area, in a relationship, that's absolutely critical. Now, one of the most infamous questions that wives ask of their husbands is the following. Does this dress make me look fat? There is no good answer to that question. Now, some have advocated changing the subject, leaving the room. I've even heard some wag who was annoyed with being asked that many times responded, it's not the dress. So what's really being asked here? What's being expressed in many cases is the fact that there might be some insecurity about how they're looking, or usually they want to be reassured that they're attractive, that they're desirable, that you find them attractive and desirable. And so if you respond to the words of the question, then they'll take you typically to a head place or a victim place, because as men, we've all been victimized by this. But if you respond from the heart, then she can respond from the heart. So words take us to these places, and we can choose where our words take us. Madam Toastmaster.